All right, assertions and preconditions. This is one thing that I don't even know what the word assertions and preconditions mean. So it's quite interesting how we will get to understand what this means here. So what are assertions and preconditions? Assertions and preconditions are checks that happen at runtime. Okay, you use them to make sure an assertion condition is satisfied before executing any further code. So that's what we learn here. You use them to make sure an essential condition is satisfied before executing any further code. So now, what is this? Is this a catch or what? Or is it some part of error handling? Okay, let's see. If the Boolean condition in the assertion or precondition evaluates to true, the code execution continues as usual. If the condition evaluates to false, the current state of the program is invalid. Code execution ends and your app is terminated. You use assertions and preconditions to express the assumptions you make and the expectations you have while coding. So you can include them as part of your code. Assertions help you find mistakes and incorrect assumptions during development, and preconditions help you detect issues in production. Okay. In addition to verifying your expectation at runtime, assertions and preconditions also become a useful form of documentation within the code. Unlike the error conditions discussed in error handling above, assertions and preconditions aren't used for recoverable or expected errors because a failed assertion or precondition indicates an invalid program state. There's no way to catch a failed assertion. Okay, I didn't understand what I was reading there. In addition to verifying, your expectation at runtime, assertions and preconditions also become a useful form of documentation within the code. Okay, I see what the word precondition can mean here. I think one thing that comes to my mind is that in order for a car to run, we should make sure that it has gas. Probably that can be the precondition. Before we start the car, before we're going to run the car, has the gas been filled in the car? That's what I'm thinking preconditions could mean here. So that we know if there's no gas, or if the gas has not been filled up, either way, we don't have to start the car because it will fail anyway. So if this is what I'm understanding, let me continue reading. In addition to verifying your expectation at runtime, assertions and preconditions also become a useful form of documentation within the code. Unlike the error conditions discussed in error handling above, assertions and preconditions are used for recoverable or expected errors. Because a failed or precondition indicates an invalid program state, there's no way to catch a failed assertion. What do they look like? Okay. Using assertions and preconditions isn't a substitute for designing your code in such a way that invalid conditions are unlikely to arise. However, using them to enforce valid data and state causes your app to terminate more predictably as an invalid state occurs, and helps make the problem easier to debug. Stopping execution as soon as an invalid state is detected also helps limit the damage caused by an invalid state. Okay, cool. This reminds me, especially with the moment that they used, validator, enforced validator. I thought of data validation. When we do this in, for example, web development, and we create a form and we want the user to enter their information and they click send. If, for example, we have a definition of what the ID number is, and for whatever reason the user enters a value that is outside of the definition of the ID number, the validation is going to have to check if the ID number is valid. If it's not valid, then we say to the user, we can't send your form forward because the ID number that you entered isn't valid. So that's what comes to my mind here. And we will see how this works. We learned that the difference between assertions and preconditions is in the way they are checked. Assertions are checked only in debug builds, but preconditions are checked in both debug and production builds. In production builds, okay, I don't know what production build is, and I guess we'll also be able to clearly define between the two, debug and production build. In production builds, the condition inside an assertion isn't evaluated. And this means you can use as many assertions as you want during a development process without impacting performance in production. Cool. So we will end it here for now before we start with debugging and assertions, because we still have some few more things before we run out of them. Cool. Assertions and preconditions. I'll end the video here. Thanks.